Los Angeles, California, a small apartment in Koreatown, present day. The man sitting across from me is 79 years old, his hands still steady despite age, still capable of holding a camera though he hasn't worked professionally in decades. His name is Robert Chen, and in 1972 he was a cinematographer for Golden Harvest Studios, brought to Los Angeles to document Bruce Lee's training methods for potential use in future films. Robert asks me to turn off my recording device before he begins. What he's about to tell me, he says, needs to be off the record initially. Once I understand the full story, I can decide whether to share it, but the recording stays off until he's finished. I agree, though everything in his body language suggests this isn't just another Bruce Lee anecdote. This is something heavier. I have footage, Robert begins in accented English, his Cantonese heritage evident in his careful pronunciation. 16mm film, 7 minutes and 43 seconds, shot in Bruce Lee's backyard in Bel Air on July 23, 1972. The only visual record of what happened when Muhammad Ali asked Bruce to prove his martial arts could work against the greatest boxer alive. Both men made me swear never to show it publicly. Both men, in the years after, denied the meeting ever happened, and I kept that promise while they were alive. But they're both gone now, and I think the truth matters more than their embarrassment. He pauses, drinks tea, continues. You understand what I'm saying? I filmed Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee testing each other privately, and what happened was so unexpected, so contrary to what both men wanted the world to believe about them, that they agreed to bury it. If I hadn't been there with my camera, if I didn't have physical proof, they would have denied it to their graves. Maybe they still did even with the proof existing. Robert opens a locked drawer, removes a small film canister. This is a copy. The original is in a safety deposit box. I'm telling you this story because I'm 79 years old and I won't live forever. Someone needs to know the truth about what these two legends were really capable of, what they really thought about each other, and why they needed that truth to stay hidden. Bel Air, California, Bruce Lee's home, late afternoon, July 23, 1972. The house sits in the hills with a view that looks out over Los Angeles, sprawling toward the ocean. Bruce has been living here for 2 years, enjoying success that was denied him for so long. The big boss made him a star in Asia. Fist of Fury solidified that stardom. Way of the Dragon proved he could direct as well as fight. Warner Brothers is now backing Enter the Dragon, the film that will make him a global phenomenon, though he doesn't know he'll die before its release. Bruce is in his backyard, a private space with high walls ensuring no neighbors can see in. He's expecting a visitor, a very specific visitor who called 3 days ago requesting a private meeting. No press, no cameras, no witnesses, just a conversation between two men whose names both start with Muhammad and Bruce, but whose approaches to combat exist on opposite ends of the philosophical spectrum. Muhammad Ali arrives at 4 o'clock. He's driven himself, no entourage, wearing sunglasses and a hat that barely disguise who he is. He's 30 years old, heavyweight champion of the world, the most famous athlete on the planet. He's also heard stories about Bruce Lee for 2 years now, stories that have reached him through various channels. Hollywood people, martial artists who've trained with Bruce, journalists who've covered both men and made inevitable comparisons. The stories suggest Bruce Lee can strike faster than Ali can see, that his understanding of combat transcends boxing, that in a real fight, without rules or referees, Bruce's martial arts would overcome Ali's boxing. These stories bother Ali, not because he's insecure, but because they contradict everything his experience has taught him. Ali has fought the best heavyweights in the world. He's absorbed punishment from Sonny Liston, Joe Frazier, fought through pain and exhaustion that would break most men. He understands combat at the highest level boxing offers. And the idea that a 135-pound martial artist could pose him serious threat seems to Ali like fantasy. But Ali is also curious. He's seen Bruce's films, watched demonstrations, and while he thinks most of it is cinema tricks and cooperative partners, there's a small part of him that wonders. That wants to know if there's substance behind the legend. So he called Bruce, proposed this meeting, and Bruce agreed under strict conditions. Private, no publicity, no recording of any kind. Except Bruce broke his own rule. He invited Robert Chen, explained that having a camera present would ensure honesty from both of them. That neither could later exaggerate or lie about what happened if objective documentation existed. Ali wasn't happy about this breach of agreement, but he understood Bruce's reasoning. And he trusted Bruce's promise that the footage would never be shown publicly without both men's permission. They meet in the backyard. Robert is already set up with his camera on a tripod, positioned to capture the space where Bruce says they'll work. Ali looks at the camera, looks at Bruce, decides to proceed. Whatever happens, he's confident it will confirm what he already believes. That boxing at the highest level beats martial arts at any level. that he's the greatest, and this will just prove it to one more skeptic. Bruce offers tea. Ali accepts. They sit in chairs under the California sun, and they talk. Just talk, for almost 30 minutes about fighting and philosophy and what makes someone truly dangerous. Ali does most of the talking, his characteristic verbal dominance on display even in private conversation. He explains his view that boxing is the purest combat sport, that stripping away kicks and grappling reveals who can really fight, that his success against the best heavyweights proves boxing's supremacy. Bruce listens patiently, occasionally asking questions that reveal he's not arguing, just trying to understand Ali's perspective completely. When Ali finishes his explanation, Bruce responds not with disagreement, but with observation. "You're right that boxing at the highest level is incredibly sophisticated," Bruce says. "Your understanding of distance, timing, defensive movement, all of it is exceptional. But you're making an assumption that isn't tested. You're assuming that boxing's rules reveal pure fighting ability. I'd argue they reveal fighting ability within a specific framework. A different framework might reveal different truths." "Then show me," Ali challenges, his competitive nature unable to resist. "Show me what your framework reveals that mine doesn't. Prove that kung fu dancing works against real fighting." "First," Bruce clarifies, "it's not kung fu. What I practice goes beyond any single style. Second, it's not dancing. Every movement has combat application. Nothing is for show. Third, I can't prove anything against you fighting full contact because you outweigh me by 80 pounds, and your punches, if they land clean, would cause me serious injury. What I can prove is that my understanding of combat addresses realities your boxing doesn't prepare you for." This is when Robert Chen starts filming. He can sense this conversation is moving from philosophical discussion toward demonstration. The camera rolls, capturing everything that follows. If you're watching this unfold and understanding that what I'm describing comes from actual footage, from visual evidence that both Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee wanted buried, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. This isn't reconstruction or imagination. This is what a cameraman recorded and kept secret for decades because both legends were embarrassed by what it revealed about their capabilities and limitations. Subscribe to hear what that footage shows. Ali stands up, ready to engage. "So demonstrate. Show me these realities boxing supposedly doesn't prepare for. I'll give you 3 free shots. No defense, no movement. You hit me with your best techniques. Let me feel what you've got. Then we'll know if your power is real or just camera tricks." Bruce shakes his head. "That would prove nothing. You standing still, allowing strikes, that's not realistic testing. In real combat, you're moving, defending, attacking. What I need to demonstrate requires your active participation. You try to hit me using your boxing. I show you why boxing alone leaves gaps in your defense." "I don't have gaps," Ali responds, and there's no arrogance in his voice, just statement of what he believes is fact. "I've fought men who've studied my style looking for weaknesses. I've survived against opponents specifically trained to exploit whatever gaps they could find. If gaps existed, someone would have used them by now." "Gaps exist in every system," Bruce explains. "They're not weaknesses in the traditional sense. They're situations the system wasn't designed to address. Boxing is optimized for boxing. Gloved hands, specific targets, rules about what's legal. When you remove those parameters, situations emerge that boxing hasn't trained you to handle." Ali is intrigued, despite his skepticism. "Show me these situations. We'll see if your theory holds up against reality." They move to the center of the open space. Robert adjusts his camera angle to capture both men clearly. Bruce explains the structure of what they're about to do. Ali will attack using boxing technique, real speed and intent but controlled power to prevent injury. Bruce will demonstrate defensive responses and counters that boxing doesn't account for. Not trying to win a fight, trying to reveal gaps in boxing's framework. Ali agrees but adds a condition. "If you're going to show me gaps in my game, I want to see if I can hit you when I'm really trying. Not full power because, yeah, you're right, I could hurt you, but full speed. I want to know if your speed is real or if it only works against people cooperating." "Fair," Bruce accepts. "When you attack, attack like you mean it. I'll handle the defense." What happens next is captured on Robert Chen's 16mm film. 7 minutes and 43 seconds of footage showing Muhammad Ali, the greatest heavyweight boxer alive, testing himself against Bruce Lee's martial arts under conditions both men agreed were fair. Ali starts with jabs. His legendary left hand, the punch that has frustrated every opponent he's faced, comes out fast and crisp. He's not putting full power behind them, but the speed is there. The timing is there. These are jabs from the heavyweight champion, technically perfect, delivered by someone who's used them to control the best fighters in the world. Bruce's head moves. Minimal motion, just enough displacement to make Ali's fist pass by his face with centimeters to spare. Not wild evasions, not dramatic slips, just efficiency. Ali throws another jab, another, starts mixing in his right hand. Bruce continues evading, staying close, staying in range where most opponents would be terrified of Ali's power. Ali begins to understand something. Bruce's defensive movement isn't random. It's reading Ali's attacks before they fully develop. The small shoulder shift that precedes Ali's jab, the weight distribution that signals his cross, the hip rotation that indicates a hook. Bruce is seeing these tells and reacting to intention rather than completed action. "You're fast," Ali admits, still throwing combinations. "Faster than anyone I've sparred with. But speed isn't enough if you can't hurt me. Can you actually hit back or just dodge?" Bruce has been waiting for this question. He stops evading and does something that makes Ali's eyes widen. Bruce's hand moves from his side to Ali's face, stopping less than an inch from the champion's nose. The movement is so fast that Ali, whose defensive reflexes are legendary, doesn't react until after the hand is already there. "I could have struck your face," Bruce says calmly. "I could have struck your throat, your eyes, your temple. Any target boxing doesn't train you to protect because boxing rules don't allow those attacks. That's the gap. Your defense is optimized for legal boxing targets. Remove those restrictions and vulnerabilities appear." Ali processes this. He didn't see the strike coming, didn't have time to react. If Bruce had followed through, Ali's face would have been hit before his defensive instincts engaged. This is different from anything he's experienced in boxing. Boxers telegraph their punches, even subtle tells that Ali has learned to read. Bruce's hand just appeared. No warning, no preparation visible. "Do it again," Ali requests. "I'll watch specifically for your preparation. Nobody can punch without loading the technique somehow." Bruce complies. His hand moves again, same speed, same lack of telegraph. This time Ali is watching for any shoulder movement, any weight shift, any indication the strike is coming. He sees nothing until the hand is already in position to make contact. "How?" Ali asks, genuinely confused. "How do you generate speed without preparation?" "Structure," Bruce explains, and he starts teaching now, showing Ali the principles. "Boxing teaches you to generate power through hip rotation and shoulder drive. That creates powerful punches but requires visible preparation. What I've developed generates power through skeletal alignment and kinetic linking. My entire body contributes to the strike but through internal mechanics that don't require external preparation. The power is there, but the telegraph isn't." Ali is fascinated. This is information nobody in boxing has shared with him because nobody in boxing has discovered it. He starts asking technical questions. Bruce answers them, demonstrating different strikes, showing Ali how each one uses structure rather than wind-up. Then Ali asks the question that changes the demonstration's direction. "Can you teach me? Can you show me how to add what you do to what I already know?" This is the moment captured on film that both men later wish hadn't been recorded. The moment when Muhammad Ali, the greatest boxer alive, acknowledges that Bruce Lee has knowledge Ali lacks. That martial arts, properly understood, addresses realities boxing misses. That he, Ali, the man who proclaims himself the greatest, sees room for improvement in an area he thought he'd mastered. Bruce spends the next 15 minutes teaching Ali, not trying to make him a martial artist, just showing him concepts he can integrate into his existing boxing. How to strike without telegraph, how to defend against attacks that come from angles boxing doesn't emphasize, how to recognize and exploit gaps in an opponent's framework the way Bruce just recognized and exploited gaps in boxing's framework. Ali absorbs everything, trying the techniques, asking clarifying questions, treating Bruce like a legitimate teacher rather than someone to be dismissed. The footage shows Ali's expression shifting from skepticism to engagement, to something like excitement as he realizes these principles work, that they enhance rather than contradict his boxing foundation. Then they reverse the exercise. Bruce asks Ali to teach him about boxing at the highest level. What does Ali understand about distance management, timing, defensive movement that martial arts might miss? Ali lights up at this request, starts explaining his approach to ring generalship, how he controls space and rhythm, how he makes opponents fight his fight rather than their own. Bruce listens with the same attention Ali showed him, trying the techniques, discovering that Ali's understanding of fighting while moving, of maintaining offense while defending, contains sophistication. Bruce's more static martial arts training didn't emphasize. The footage shows both men, two masters from different disciplines, teaching each other, learning from each other, acknowledging that neither approach is complete alone. This goes on for almost 30 minutes. By the time they finish, both men are sweating, smiling, energized by the exchange. They shake hands, embrace briefly, two legends who've just discovered mutual respect through honest testing and teaching. Then the implications of what just happened hit both of them simultaneously. Muhammad Ali just acknowledged on camera that a martial artist taught him something about fighting. Bruce Lee just acknowledged on camera that boxing contains sophistication martial arts miss. Both men have built public personas around being complete, around having mastered combat in their respective domains. This footage contradicts those personas, shows vulnerability, shows incompleteness, shows two men admitting gaps in their knowledge. They look at Robert Chen, at the camera still recording. Ali speaks first. That footage cannot be shown, ever. I'm the greatest. That's not ego, that's brand. If people see me learning from someone who's not a boxer, it undermines everything I've built. They'll say Ali admitted he doesn't know everything about fighting. That's not how champions stay champions. Bruce understands Ali's concern because he shares it. I've built my reputation on having transcended traditional martial arts, on having developed a complete combat system. If people see me learning from boxing, it suggests my system isn't complete. It gives my critics ammunition. Traditional martial artists already criticize me for abandoning classical forms. This would prove to them that I still need input from external sources. They negotiate with Robert for 10 minutes. Both men want the footage destroyed. Robert refuses, explaining that documentary evidence has historical value beyond their personal concerns. But he offers a compromise. He'll keep the footage secured, never show it publicly without permission from both men. If either of them dies, the surviving one controls the decision. If both die, Robert can choose what to do with it, based on whether the historical value outweighs the privacy concerns. Both men reluctantly agree. They understand Robert's point about historical documentation, and they trust his promise not to release it while they're alive to be embarrassed by what it shows. Before I continue with what happened after this meeting, what Robert Chen discovered in the years following, I need to know you're understanding the weight of this moment. Drop a comment. Tell us where you're watching from and whether this story of two legends finding mutual incompleteness is resonating. Because what happens next, how both men handled having this footage exist, reveals something about legacy and truth that goes beyond fighting. Over the following months, Robert notices something interesting. Both Ali and Bruce, in separate interviews and contexts, begin subtly changing how they talk about combat and mastery. Not dramatically, not in ways that reference their private meeting, but in small linguistic shifts that suggest the encounter affected their thinking. Ali, in an interview about his upcoming fight with Ken Norton, mentions that boxing doesn't address every combat situation. In the ring, with rules, I'm the greatest, Ali says, but I'm smart enough to know that different contexts require different skills. A street fighter might have tools I don't practice because they're illegal in boxing. That doesn't make him better than me, but it means my expertise has boundaries. This is new language for Ali. Before the meeting with Bruce, he spoke in absolutes about boxing's supremacy. After the meeting, his statements include nuance, acknowledgement that frameworks create both strengths and limitations. Bruce, in an article for a martial arts magazine, writes about the importance of learning from other disciplines. Jeet Kune Do isn't about rejecting everything that came before. It's about taking the best from all sources and synthesizing something better. Boxing, when practiced at the highest level, contains lessons about footwork and defensive movement that martial artists ignore at their peril. I've learned from boxers, wrestlers, fencers, anyone who's mastered their art deeply enough to reveal universal truths about combat. This is more explicit acknowledgement than Bruce typically offered about learning from specific combat sports. His previous writings emphasized developing beyond external sources. After the Ali meeting, he's more forthcoming about ongoing learning from elite practitioners of different systems. Robert Chen watches these subtle shifts and understands he witnessed something transformative. Not a fight where one man proved superiority, but an exchange where two legends discovered that mastery includes acknowledging what you don't know and learning from anyone who can teach you something true. But Robert also notices both men, when asked directly about each other, deny ever meeting privately. A journalist asks Ali if he knows Bruce Lee. I've seen his movies, Ali responds. He's a great actor, but we've never met. Our worlds don't really intersect. Bruce, asked the same question, gives similar response. Muhammad Ali is the greatest boxer of our time. I admire his skill, but we've never trained together or met privately. That's a rumor people like to spread, but it's not based in fact. Both men lie casually, convincingly, because both need the lie, need their public personas to remain intact, need to be seen as complete masters who reach the pinnacle without admitting gaps or seeking help from outside their discipline. Robert Chen keeps the footage secure and never mentions the meeting publicly while both men are alive. Bruce dies in 1973, just 11 months after the private demonstration. Ali continues boxing until 1981, lives until 2016. Robert maintains his silence throughout, honoring his promise even as the legend of Bruce Lee grows and the mythology around Ali's greatness solidifies. But Robert also makes copies of the footage, keeps them in different locations. Because he understands the historical value of documenting the moment when two legends acknowledged each other's mastery, while simultaneously revealing their own incompleteness. Now, with both men gone, Robert Chen feels the promise that bound his silence has ended. He's showing me the footage on a small screen in his apartment. 7 minutes and 43 seconds of grainy 16mm film showing exactly what he described. Ali and Bruce testing each other, teaching each other, acknowledging gaps in their respective approaches, laughing together as they discover mutual respect through honest exchange. The footage is remarkable not because it shows who would win in a hypothetical fight, but because it shows two masters being vulnerable enough to admit incompleteness, curious enough to learn from someone whose approach differs from their own, secure enough in their abilities to acknowledge that even mastery has room for growth. "Why didn't you show this earlier?" I ask Robert. "Why wait until now?" His response is thoughtful, considered. While they were alive, showing it would have hurt them. Their legacies were built on projecting completeness, on being the greatest in their domain. This footage complicates those narratives, shows them as students as much as masters, as people still learning rather than people who'd finished learning. I respected them too much to damage their legacies for the sake of historical accuracy. But now they're both gone. Their legacies are secure. Ali is remembered as the greatest boxer who ever lived. Bruce is remembered as the martial arts master who revolutionized how the world thinks about fighting. Showing this footage doesn't diminish those legacies. It enhances them. It shows that their greatness included the wisdom to recognize what they didn't know and the humility to learn from anyone who could teach them something true. Robert pauses the footage on a frame showing Ali and Bruce standing side by side, both smiling, both relaxed. Two legends in a private moment of mutual discovery. "This is the truth they didn't want people to know," Robert says quietly. "Not that they met, not that they tested each other, but that they found each other incomplete. That Ali, the greatest boxer, discovered gaps in his game. That Bruce, the complete martial artist, learned from boxing. That mastery isn't about perfection, but about endless growth. That the greatest warriors are the ones who never stop learning even after reaching the pinnacle of their art. They wanted people to remember them as complete, as having mastered combat absolutely. But this footage shows something more valuable. It shows them as human, as students, as people wise enough to acknowledge that no single person or system contains all truth. That's the real lesson. That's what both men were embarrassed about, and what actually makes them greater than their public personas suggested. That's the truth Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee tried to bury. Not that they met privately, not that they tested each other, but that their meeting revealed both men had room to grow, had gaps to fill, had learning still to do, despite reaching the absolute pinnacle of their respective disciplines. If this story revealed something about how real mastery includes acknowledging incompleteness, subscribe so you never miss these deeper truths. Comment below. Tell us where you're watching from and what this footage's existence means to you. Let's honor these legends not by preserving the myths they wanted, but by understanding the reality that makes them truly great. Robert Chen has agreed to release the footage publicly for the first time. Not for profit, not for sensation, but because he believes both men would want their true legacy preserved. Not the legend of invincibility they cultivated during their lives, but the reality of continuous growth that defined their actual practice. The footage will be donated to a martial arts and sports history archive where scholars and practitioners can study it, can see what happens when two masters from different disciplines meet with honest curiosity instead of ego. Where future generations can learn not just techniques, but the philosophy that made both men great. The understanding that mastery is a journey without destination, that learning never stops, that even legends have teachers if they're wise enough to recognize them. Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee met privately on July 23, 1972. They tested each other. They taught each other. They discovered mutual respect and mutual incompleteness. And they tried to keep it secret because their public personas required projecting absolute mastery rather than acknowledging ongoing growth. But Robert Chen was there with his camera, and because he was there, because he documented what happened, the truth survived their denial. The footage exists. 7 minutes and 43 seconds of two legends being vulnerable, being students, being wise enough to learn from each other despite their different approaches to combat. If the cameraman hadn't been there, both men would have denied it happened. They did deny it while alive. But the footage doesn't lie. It shows exactly what Robert Chen described. The moment when the greatest boxer and the most revolutionary martial artist stopped performing for the world and honestly explored what each could teach the other. That's the demonstration Muhammad Ali wanted kept private. That's the footage Bruce Lee wanted destroyed. That's the truth both legends needed hidden to protect their public personas. And that's the historical record that survived their embarrassment to show us something more valuable than invincibility. That greatness includes the wisdom to recognize what you don't know and the humility to learn from anyone who can teach you something true, even when that lesson complicates the legend you've spent your life building.